Hello, welcome to the solution video for my fourth puzzle called Swirlies. As you could probably guess from the title, that is because of all these kinds of spiral shaped patterns going on in the grid. Figured I'd just give it kind of a silly cute name like that. So across the grid we have these sort of like L shapes going on. With the cages down here, you see they're only 1x2 cages, but they still form this sort of spiral shape. I would say this is probably the second easiest puzzle I've released of the four that I've released so far. So definitely recommend you check out my other ones after if you felt this was a bit too easy. Or if you want one that's easier than this, then check out Hidden Patterns. That's my definitely easiest one, I believe. And so for this one, let's look through the rules. So we have normal Sudoku rules apply. And let's place digits 1 to 9 once each in each row, column, and 3x3 box. Gray lines are thermometers, and digits must increase as they move away from the bulb. When we say bulb, we mean these sort of circle shapes. So there's a couple things you can get out of that. With these being 4 long, if we said that that was a 6, we would automatically know this has to be 7, 8, 9, because we have to increase as we go away from the 6. Whereas if this is a 1, this could be anywhere from, I believe, 2 up to 7, and anything in between. Because you could have 2, 7, 8, 9, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, all sorts of things you can do there. Next, we can look at the green German whisper lines. Adjacent digits on these lines must differ by at least 5. So if we said that this was a 2, this would need to be at least a 7 to be 5 away from it. And then this would similarly need to be 5 less than whatever this ends up being. So if that was an 8, this would have to be at least a 3 minimum. Couldn't be a 2 because we have a 2 there already. And we'd be continuing this pattern, going up by another 5 then there. Next, cells surrounded in dotted lines are cages. Cells in cages must sum to the total in the top left corner of the cage, and it is noted that some of these cages don't have totals. And that's because they are only here to contribute to the visual theme, to have this spiral effect going on here. The ones without numbers on the corners don't contribute to the logic at all. And sometimes if you had a cage that was like this, but it extended down, then that would still be useful, because you would know that cells and digits don't repeat in the cages. Here, I didn't mention the fact that normally cells don't repeat in cages, because you don't need that information here. They're already within the same 3x3 box, so it doesn't matter. They're already not going to repeat anyways. Next, cells connected by an X must sum to 10. So these two would need to sum to 10. It could be 6 and 4, 8 and 2, etc. And finally, a little arrow symbol, or up arrow symbol thing, between two cells points to the smaller digit. So whatever this green cell would be, needs to be less than that pink cell. And with that, let's reset the timer. Not that I'm really timing myself, I'm going to be taking my time here, but... So, the way I say we need to begin with this is we need to focus on the middle 3 rows here. Rows 4, 5, and 6. You can see there's a lot of information going on here with the thermometers. And it might not seem obvious that there's anything you can get out of this, but one of the things that usually you do when you have a lot of thermometers is to start looking for digits or places that digits are really restricted. Or you think about, for example, 1 and 9 on thermometers. Those are really restricted because if you have a box where there's only thermometers going on, or a row where there's only thermometers, then 1 and 9 are forced to be either on the very beginning of a thermometer or at the very end of a thermometer. So if you look at row 6, for example, all of this row, all of it is thermometer. There's no cell that's not a part of a thermometer. So 1 and 9 would be restricted onto one of these 6 cells. In this case, that's not particularly useful. That's nowhere near enough information quite yet. But we could do the same up here. You can see, again, we have a row full of thermometers up here. We have some sort of pattern here. But we want to apply a similar logic, but we want to look at row 5 here. We want to see the fact that even though we have some cells that are not part of thermometers here, all the cells that are part of thermometers are always the second cell of a thermometer. So like this here, that all 6 of these are not the beginning or the end of a thermometer. So the inverse kind of holds here, that these 6 cells cannot have a 1 or 9 in them. Because if it did, you would never be able to have something less than it up here. And if it was a 9, you could never put anything greater than it after. So by that, we could say that these 3 middle cells must have 1, 9 in some order. Using corner pencil marking just because we don't know exactly where yet. And now if we look a little closer at the X in the middle here, if this is a 1 or a 9, the other side of it would have to be a 1 or a 9 to make it sum to 10. And as we just addressed, we can't have that. So we can take out 1 and 9 from there, and we now know that these cells must be 1 and 9 in some order. And using that information, we can now combine that with this less than symbol. And we can say, well, you could never have a 9 here, because 9 is not able to be less than something else. So that tells us the order of these is 1 and 9 like that. So the next thing we want to think about is, again, staying in the middle row here. Another thing you can arise out of these 6 cells being all kind of second part of a thermometer here is that you also cannot put 8 on any of those for the same exact reason, except only in the upwards direction. If this was an 8, there's no 2 digits that you could put after this. You couldn't even put a 9 in this case. But say it was here. You could never put a 9 followed by something like a 10 after. Same applies for all of these. So in reality, even though we noticed 1 and 9 here, the reality is actually it's 1, 8, and 9 that are tricky in this middle row, and we now know that that must go in the middle here. We now know because that's not an X, this must be a 2, and that automatically gives us a 1 on this thermometer, because you need something less than it. And that's the beginning of our break-in step. Now from here, this is where I imagine that depending on the type of Sudoku solver you are, you might take different approaches towards how you continue going past this point. I'm going to do it in a way that might seem a little chaotic at first, but I think it'll be a better way of demonstrating how to spot some of the digits that we need to spot next. So, this is going to seem like a lot of work at first, but I'm going to say let's look at all of the beginnings of these that don't have numbers in them yet. We're going to do a lot of pencil marking here. I find thermometers that are only 4 cells long are a little pushing it in terms of getting away with it for pencil marking, but I think it's useful in this case. And this will, if nothing else, this will teach people while watching this how to deal with pencil marking thermometers. So, we have the beginnings of a bunch of 4 cell long thermometers. You could have 1s in them. Now I know a bunch of these can't be 1, I'll deal with that in a second. You could have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on them. That's because if you think about the minimum, again, 1 is fine, and the maximum, you could have 6, 7, 8, 9 on these thermometers. So you could have anywhere from 1 to 6 in these. If we now look at the second cells, we basically are doing the same thing, but just adding 1 to that. So the first cell of the thermometer must be 1 through 6. This must be 2 through 7. The third spots must be 3 through 8. And then those final spots must be 4 through 9 in some order. That's because, again, if we take this kind of best case scenario minimum, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4. And maximum, you could go something like 6, 7, 8, 9. Or 6, 7, 8, 9 here, maybe. As you can see, I have my conflict checker on. Again, that's really helpful just for video purposes. A lot of people like solving without it on. In my case here, I really just... I will forget where I am in a puzzle if I don't do that. So, a couple things we can do now. We can start taking out the red options from all of these. So that stays. Something else we can do, we have an X here. You can never have a 5 on an X because you would need to have 5 and 5 together. So we can take out 5 from there as well. And so the way you would adjust the pencil marks now is we have some problems here because let's say we look at this thermometer. You could have 2 here as the minimum, and you could have 3 here as the minimum. But you would never be able to get 3 on this third cell because you would be 2, 3, and then another 3. So the way you want to look at adjusting pencil marks for a thermometer is to focus on the minimum case and make sure that it always is going up by at least 1. So 2, 3, we can take out the 3 there. That's now a 4, meaning the minimum of this one can't be a 4, so that must be a 5. And then you can do the same for the maximum, saying we also generally want to go from the top down this time. 8, the maximum for this next one would never be another 8. So we can take that out and make it a 7. Maximum for this is now forced to be a 6. And maximum for this is forced to be a 5. Now, I'm going to do that for all of the remaining ones here real quick. Again, we're just looking for cases where the minimum and maximum are adjusting as they should. 2, 3, 4, and 5, 9, 8, 7, 6. This has 2, 3, 4, and 5, 9, 8, 7, 6. That looks good for now. So that's all cleaned up now. And while I was putting in some of those, we noticed a couple things. Like, we noticed that 1 could actually only go in this spot, basically anywhere here. You can see that just from normal Sudoku logic anyways, that we have 1s here, meaning 1 is locked into this area of this box, and you can never have a 1 in those spots. So you must have a 1 there. We can now do similar with 2 in this row, because we can see 2 can't go in any of those, can't go in any of those, and it can't go in any of those. And this is why I say putting all these pencil marks, even though it seems a bit absurd, I think it's really helpful when you're not sure exactly what to look at next. When you're spotting, these are what we call hidden singles. So this is the only spot in this row where 2 can go. That's hidden because it's not really obvious, but if you have all the candidates typed in, you can catch it pretty quick. Some people say that's kind of like cheating, I guess, because it's not really spotting the logic, it's just looking at all the available possible options, but I think it's just a time saver. It's a whole lot better than just staring at the grid until you eventually see it. I don't find that super logical. That must be a 2. That means we can't have a 2 up here. That's going to adjust this thermometer's minimum a little bit. Now, if we continue the same chain of questioning here, well, we can see 2s are now locked into top row of this box, and that can only go here. So now we have all the 1s and 2s in the middle area figured out. So the next obvious question might be to look at 3 maybe, because that might be the next most restricted thing. And if you're looking ahead like that, you'll see that 3 is now limited only here. That takes out a 3 from here, and we can just continue to keep adjusting our pencil marks. And now we have, let's see, if 3 is locked into the middle of this box. It's not really useful yet, but I'll mark that there. 3 must be on the bottom of these, just like that. So it looks like that's all we can do for 3s for now. So again, keep the questioning chain going. Maybe look at 4s. And if you spot that, we can see 4 can't go in any of these. The 4 must go here. That's going to be really, really powerful, actually, because now we can automatically place a 3 here, because it's the only digit available that's less than that. We can now take out 3 and 4 from here. We've continued to make sure we're always increasing our minimum, so that can't be a 5 at the beginning, that can't be a 5 or a 6. And now next, we need to spot something that's a little trickier to see. And that's only because we haven't placed some very, very freebie, easy digits. I would say maybe pause for a second, see if you can figure out what the center of these must be. And that is, it must be 5 in the center of those. That's because when we explained our German whisper lines, everything has to be different by at least 5. That means we're always going to have a low digit followed by a high digit, or vice versa. And we can't actually have 5 on one of those lines, because anything 5 higher than 5 would be 10, anything 5 less than 5 would be a 0. We can place 5 in the center here, 5 in the center here. And that's going to take out 5 from that cell here. And that's useful because we can now place 5 in this box. 5 must go there. That's the only spot for it. We can now take out 5 from those. As you can see, our pencil marks are still fine like that. But we can now see 2 additional things over here. 4 and 7. 7 can only go in the center of this row here. You can see there's only 4, 6, 7 remaining. These 2 spots are the only ones 7 can go into. We can take out 7 from there. Additionally, we can also see that 4 in this box can't go in any of those, can't go in any of those. So 4 must be in the center there. So we can actually take out 6 as an option from there, and say this is now a 4-7 pair in this row, meaning that this cell cannot be 4 or 7. That must be a 6. And if we look at this thermometer, you'll see this is going to type in the whole thermometer for us, because to go higher than that, we need a 7 and a 9 there. 6, 7, 9. That must be a 4 with a 6 on the other side for the X. That can't be a 4. This being a 4, being less than that means this needs to be a 3. That's a 5. It's a 9. Adjust our pencil marks. You can never have a 7 here anymore, so that must be a 4. 7, 8, and 9 with a 4, 5, 6. 8, 7, and 6. Now, I personally, when I was first setting this, I put the thermometers in the middle and didn't really have anything else in the grid yet. I had a couple of extra X's. I think it was an X here and an X in one other spot to make sure that 5 was eliminated, until I eventually realized I could do this with the German Whispers underneath, and that forces 5s, which does the same job as that, and continues the theme going on. But yeah, I was quite amazed, honestly. I just kind of happened to put that pattern in the center 3 rows and found that with just a couple of extra hints, like with the X's and the less than symbol there, with just that you're able to fill in all 3 of the middle rows before even looking anywhere else. I thought that was really cool. So, where to go next? Something I usually would have done if I was solving this myself, one of the first things I would have done, would have been to immediately pencil mark all the options into these cages that do have totals. We can do that now. If we want to make 11, there are 4 ways to do that. 2 and 9, 3 and 8, 4 and 7, 5 and 6. Now, a couple of those aren't possible anymore, but we have a 3 in the column, so this can't be 3, 8. We have a 4, so this can't be 4, 7. And we have a 5 on top, meaning you can never have a 6 underneath it. Same here, it could be 4, 9, 5, 8, or 6, 7. It can't be 5, 8, or 6, 7, due to the 5 and 6s here. So we know this must be a 4, 9, which means you could not have a 9 over here, which takes out 9 and 2. We can actually place the 11 cage there. Now down here, we want to look at the 15 cage. That must be 6, 9, or 7, 8. It can never be a 6 because we have that in the same column. So we already know that's a 7, 8. This can be 1, 6, 2, 5, or 3, 4. This cell can't be 1 or 6, so neither can this. That can't be a 3, so we take out 4. That can't be a 5, take out 2. So the 7 cage not quite resolved yet. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot else we can do in this area, because this is 5, actually basically 7 cells that are still wide open with options. So let's look at the German Whisper lines, because especially this area, we have a lot of digits in this column now. So surely there must be some sort of restriction going on here. So the way I'm going to do that is, again, I'm going to kind of pencil mark all the options, just so we can see it more clearly. You can take out 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the way that personally I would spot this is, also take out 7 and 8. With German Whispers, we need to be going between low and high digits. And as we can see here, this is a sequence of 3 digits, where the only low digit on that is 2. So if we were to put a 2 here, you could certainly go up to 7, 8, 9 here, but you wouldn't have any remaining low digits to go back down to here, because we already used the 2. So we have the sequence of 3 with only one low digit in it. So that low digit must be in the middle. Which means we can now put 7, 8, 9 and 7, 8, 9 on those sides here. This must be a low digit, so it must be 1, 2, 3, or 4. And now the power of that is we can now see 6. Can't go here, can't go there. We have a 6 in this column, 6 can't go there. So weirdly enough, 6 is actually restricted down here. Now 6 is a powerful digit on German Whisper lines, because to be 5 less than 6 is a 1. So if you ever place a 6, you immediately know where the 1 is. It has to be right next to it. So we can take out the 1 there. This must be 5 away from it, so it must be 6, 7, 8, or 9. This must be low digit, 1, 2, 3, or 4. But this can't be a 4, because we have 4, 9 in the column. So that must be a 3. That must be a 4. 4 is similar to 6, that being 5 away from it is a 9. That's the only thing it can be. 3 being 5 away from that must be at least an 8. So that must be the 8 because it can't be 7. And just like that, we have this little German arrow, or German Whisper, complete. And now, there's a little bit of pencil marking and reduction you can do up here, but I will say we're not going to be able to get anything immediately from it quite yet. So I'm not going to bother with that, because that would make the screen way too cluttery. So again, since this is a solution video, I'm just going to jump to what the next correct thing to be doing is. This is possibly what some people might consider the hardest part of the puzzle, just because this kind of revolves on going back to classic Sudoku and just really scanning the grid, looking for areas that are kind of weak, sort of. It's not really as logical as I was hoping it would be, but I couldn't find a way to make this step look easier to see without making it too obvious, or without it risking an earlier stage being too easy. So the thing we want to look at is Whenever you're stuck like this, I usually look for rows or columns or boxes that only have a couple of spots free. So prime candidate of that would be row 7 right now, because we have 3, 4, 9, and 6. And we also have 7, 8 as a pair here, meaning there's actually only 3 digits that are not accounted for, and that's a triple of some sort. And it's usually worth at least investigating that. So that is 1, 2, and 5. Must go into these 3 spots. And as we can see with that, this can't be a 1 or a 2. So that must be a 5. So that must be 1, 2 in some order. And now this is most likely the trickiest thing to spot in the puzzle. And this is not obvious, but this was a necessary step here, because that takes out 5 from this cell. We look at the other 5s in the grid, and highlight all of them, we see there's actually really only, I think, 1 left to place. Yeah, so we can actually place all of the 5s now. That's because we can't have 5s in either of those, and the columns can't go there. And the other remaining 5 must be down here, because we just placed this 5, which takes it out from here, and those. This 5 in this row, and those block that out. Now, the only reason I say this might be hard to find is because most people solving these puzzles tend to forget about classic Sudoku in the middle, and they just focus on the clues and the cages and whatnot, and they forget to look for easy digits like that, but maybe you spot it quicker. So 5 must go there, and as we remember, this is part of a 7 cage, so that means we must have a 2 next to it. And that gives us the 1 and 2 up here. Now we can sort of continue this chain, and we can ask, well, look for continuing to find difficult to spot digits. And this requires a bit of the benchmarking up here, so I'm actually going to type all that in now, even though it's going to look a little messy for a second. So that's all the possible candidates. You see there's no paying attention to the low or high at this point. But something you can notice, like I mentioned down here, 6 and 4 are pretty restricted. Partially because they have to be next to a 1 and 4. But it also means you can't have a 6 or a 4 in the middle of a line segment like this. You can never have a 4 here, because you would have to have 9 on both sides of it. So you can take out 4 from there, or from here. Same logic, you can take out 6 from there. Over here, we can take out 6 from there. As you can see, we now have a 2-9 pair here. Take out 2 and 9 from everywhere else in the box. And now we notice that this 6 is impossible to place, because it would need a 1 next to it. So that must be a 4, followed by a 9, followed by a 2. Now being at least 5 away from that means must be 3, 7, or 8. 4 can't go here. This is now the only spot in this box where 6 can go. So it must be 6 followed by 1. Being 5 away from that means 7 or 8. Being down from this would make that the 3. Now we know this is a 3, so that can't be a 7, because that's only 4 away. 7 and 8. That's going to sort out this down here. And that's going to also sort out the 13 gauge here. And now at this point, we've used up all the clues in the grid, so it's just going to be normal Sudoku rules at this point. This column needs, I'm really bad at spotting this, I believe that's a 6. These 3 cells need a 3, 4, and a 9. So that's a 4 with a 3, 9 here. Not resolved quite yet. This column needs 1, 2, needs a 7. This column needs 8. These 3 need to be 1, 2, and 3. Not quite resolved yet. We can maybe continue the same logic, look at the row up here. See, this needs a 1 and a 3, we know that from over here. It also needs a 4. 4 can only go there, take that out from here. Now we're going to have to start looking at areas with 4 available options now. We have 1, 5, 9, 6, and 4 available here. So we need 2, 3, 7, and 8 to finish the row. 2, 3, 8, and 2, 7. Here, we need 1, 2, 6, and 9. Now this is going to do some work here, because we have a 1, 2 pair in this row now. So this can't be a 9, which makes that the 6. Almost there. Now this row needs 7, 8, and 9. This row needs 1, 2, 3, and 7. That can only be a 3. It's going to give us 9 and 3 over here. 8 there. 7 and 2. This is going to resolve most of this. 7 and 9. And then here we need 1 here and 4 there. And just like that, we are now complete. About 23 minutes. I had to pause and kind of chop up the video a bit because I made a mistake at one point, but so that might not match the video time. But yeah, so it says, hope you didn't get too dizzy looking at the swirls. Kind of just enjoyed the visual theme for this. Like I said, I would call this not the easiest you could ever make a puzzle, because there's a bit of scanning for just some hidden spots in the middle there, but personally I tend to just not bother with like highlighting digits and looking that way, because I just find it easier to just type all the candidates and just reduce the options like I did at the end. Chances are that final step would be much easier to do if you actually just did look at where things could possibly be. But that's just my style. Okay, thank you for watching. You can check the description below. There'll be a link to this puzzle, both on Sudoku Pad directly and also on Logic Masters. Just last night I updated the format of my Logic Masters posts to include links to my other puzzles, so if you want to see the others, feel free to click them there. You can also check on my YouTube channel. I have a public playlist that includes the 4 solution videos I've posted so far. Yeah, happy solving.